Hey everybody, this is Pierre Camus, the Roto Chef here with RotoBaller to help you with Week 6 lineup advice. This time talking about wide receivers. Don't forget to check out also our running back start sit advice. So I'm going to give you some names that I think are must starts and a couple of guys I'd actually bench that you may already have in your lineup, guys you would usually start. Now, of course, it always depends. If you have a specific question about your lineup or who to start or sit, hit me up on Twitter. But let's get into it. The first wide receiver that I'm liking this week that really is starting to get a little bit of buzz, but not enough, is Amon-Ra St. Brown. This guy who was a popular sleeper in the preseason for deeper leagues, especially PPR leagues. Everybody loves their rookies. Some of the rookie wide receivers didn't look too impressive during training camp. Some guys got hurt. And Amon-Ra St. Brown was really one of those kind of sneaky late round picks. And then he kind of fell flat in the preseason. The exhibition games really did nothing. And then everyone also realized, wow, Detroit's really, really going to be bad. And they are. 0-5 kind of just speaks to that. But sometimes you can get good players for fantasy on bad teams, especially when there's no other options. And Detroit is one of those teams. So I was a huge TJ Hawkinson fan, have him in about 90% of my leagues. Huge 2 weeks and then nothing since, but we know he's banged up. He had a shoulder issue. Now he's got something else going on, like a knee issue. I think he's going to play this week, but you know what? Even so, he's played the last couple of games. It's been St. Brown who's taken over as the leading receiver for 2 straight games. Amon-Ra St. Brown taking over. He is the lead target and also the leading receiver in terms of catches for the Lions. Now, again, that's not saying a whole lot because this Lions offense is not dynamic. And St. Brown, look, he's not scoring touchdowns, not putting up 100-yard games. I'm not saying he's going to do that this week, but he is now supporting PPR owners with wide receiver 3 value because he's getting you double-digit points. So if he can continue to go upwards, which I think he can, because again, Hawkinson is still hurt, and then now they're actually publicly coming out and saying, yeah, we want to get him the ball more. And that was Jared Goff saying that he's impressed with St. Brown. They're going to keep feeding him. And I believe it because who else are they going to feed, really? I mean, who else do they have other than throwing it to the running backs? Jamal Williams is banged up this week. I think everything points to the fact that St. Brown is going to keep seeing his target share go up and up. And it's not really so much just about the matchup. Like Cincinnati is nothing to fear anyway, so it's actually a decent matchup. But again, you always want to chase target volume, and this is a guy who's getting it. So a smart waiver wire pickup who I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and now a guy I think you can plug in your lineup, especially with bye weeks coming in. You got some receivers that are missing anyways. All right, now let's talk about Nicole Hardman. So this will probably be the first time I've actually really wholeheartedly endorsed Nicole Hardman. He's always been a guy I thought just overhyped, overvalued. Everybody in the Chiefs offense is, immediately overvalued because we think tied to Pat Mahomes, tied to the highest scoring offense, tied to Andy Reid offense, and it just doesn't work out. Unless your name is Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, it's not guaranteed to happen for you ever or any given week. You'll see a random guy score a touchdown here and there, but nobody gets a lot of targets. Well, Hardman got a lot of targets last week, inexplicably. Talk about 12 targets in one game, 9 catches, 76 yards. Again, not a huge game, but the fact that he was peppered so much is interesting. Well, it was interesting because Buffalo took away Tyreek Hill. They did the smart thing. They took away the big play. They did the thing that the Eagles didn't do, and they let them, target Hardman. That's fine. You have that underneath stuff. You throw it to the third receiver. Okay, so Kelce was limited. Tyreek Hill completely taken out. Well, Tyreek Hill might be completely taken out of the lineup this week because he hasn't been practicing. He's got a quad injury, and we'll still see what happens this weekend. Could be a game time decision. But even if he does play, which is possible, I mean, he could be limited. Washington, if they're smart, then they might look at the game plan and say, hey, maybe we should double team Tyreek Hill, take him out of the game. So I think that maybe the Chiefs have to adjust and they'll realize they're going to have to find other guys. I do think Hardman has a chance to make a splash here, especially the fact that, look, going from Buffalo last week, one of the best, maybe the best defense in the league right now, going to Washington, I think we all know how Washington's football team has done defensively, especially Washington fans not too happy, allowing the 6th most fantasy points per game, also 6th most yardage to wide receivers. So everything is in there. The recipe is for Hardman to be successful, especially if Hill sits and doesn't play at all this week. I think you almost have to start Nicole Hardman, assuming you have him. All right, now Darnell Mooney. It's tough to really recommend any Bear receiver these days. Allen Robinson, I'm not going to even get into him right now. But we know with Robinson, he has been injured this week too. Also questionable going into the weekend. If he doesn't play, of course, that makes Mooney the wide receiver 1, and we don't even know who the wide receiver 2, 3, 4 is there. And it doesn't really matter because nobody's relevant in this passing game much. Don't forget, okay, so the Justin Fields era here has been about 3 weeks. The first game almost doesn't count because that was the game where he got sacked 9 times and there was 0 offense because, well, Matt Nagy just wasn't ready for that. So the next game, Mooney went for 5 catches and 125 yards. He was the guy. Now, last week, crashed down again, didn't do much, but that was a game where they didn't pass it again much either because, well, they didn't need to. The Raiders just fell flat. They were in control all game, didn't need to pass. Their running backs were going so well. Okay, so Fields has barely thrown the ball, right? It's about 20 times each game. It's not about volume so much, but when he does throw, and he probably will have to throw this game because they're playing the Packers. Okay, I have a feeling they may not be cruising over the Packers for a long time in this game. Could be a close game, but still, they're going to have to throw the ball. And if Allen Robinson is out or limited or just keeps being invisible like he's been doing, I think Mooney's the guy here. And I think that with Jair Alexander out, again, that's the Packers' best cover corner, one of the best cover corners in the league, honestly. Unfortunately, out for a while. So Mooney has a shot to be a kind of a target magnet here and put up some chunk yardage. It is a little risky. I'm not going to say it isn't, but I think everything's kind of falling into place for a Mooney breakout. So he's a guy, hard to say must start based on who else you have, but I'm definitely starting him over Allen Robinson this week, even if Robinson does play. And I got him in a couple lineups myself. Now, on the other side, well, Amari Cooper, how do you sit Amari Cooper? Now, you probably aren't going to have a ton of guys you necessarily want to put over him. I would put those other 3 guys I just mentioned, Hardman, Mooney, St. Brown, I put them over Cooper this week, and let me tell you why. And I'm not the only one who has said this. I know I've seen a couple of places where Cooper is a sit, including our own top 10 bust. If you look at our bust article that just came out. So Cooper has, basically been living off of week 1 fame here in fantasy terms, because he had that huge monster week 1, which, well, everyone, in that Cowboys-Bucks game had a huge week 1. Targeted a ridiculous amount of times. I think it was like 19 times in week 1. He hasn't been targeted that much since then. Every game since then, the last 4 games, 3 catches. Exactly 3 catches. Okay, that's not that great, but he has been getting fantasy points because he's been scoring, right? He reached the end zone in the last couple of weeks. That's not guaranteed, right? Touchdowns are kind of hard to chase. You don't want to do that. But also look at the matchup here going against the Patriots. Obviously one of the better pass defenses in the league, despite what happened last week. I do think that the opportunity for Cooper is going to be a little limited. He's a guy who's been banged up too. A rib injury, a hamstring injury. Don't forget the Cowboys going into their bye next week. I have a feeling they kind of ease back on Cooper and the passing game, and I think they're going to try to make this kind of a ground and pound game because Zeke and Pollard have been running so well. I know a lot of people are going to foresee a lot of points, for Dak Prescott in the passing game. I think this is more about the running backs this week. I really don't think Cooper's going to get that many targets. I really don't think he's going to have that much success. And so, again, while I can't say he's going to absolutely bomb, I'm just not feeling it this week for him. I think it's a disappointing week. So if you have somebody with more upside and you need that boom play, I sit Cooper. And then last and least is the Jaguars wide receivers. I'm going to throw Laviska Shenault and Marvin Jones Jr. here together because just there's no need to even distinguish or even dive into the numbers. They're Jaguars wide receivers. 1 catch, really. These guys can go a whole game and just get 1 catch. We're going to throw Dan Arnold, Jamal Agnew, and these guys the ball more. Okay, so there's a serious problem in Jacksonville, and it's spelled Meyer. Until that changes, it's not worth playing anybody really in Jacksonville other than James Robinson. Okay, they don't know what to do with Shenault. He's a talented receiver. He stayed healthy. That was the only issue we had with him is, injuries. What are they doing with him? And so now we thought DJ Chark going out with injury would actually help these receivers, especially Shenault, right? I fell for it too. I love Chanel preseason. I loved Chanel last week. It was a complete dud because they're not throwing him the ball. It is not his fault. Okay, but that's the problem. This is not going to change until there's a big fundamental change in this offense and this team at the top. You know what I mean? Okay, so Chanel now is moved from the slot to the outside, and that's actually going to make him less efficient, less likely to get these targets because Trevor Lawrence doesn't have a lot of time to throw, and when he throws, he's not always accurate. So it's going to take time for this offense to figure things out. Look, I like Shenault as a long-term play. Marvin Jones, maybe there's hope in the second half of the season for him. Trevor Lawrence, look, we know he has the talent. He just needs some guidance and maybe a little bit of time. But for right now, especially this week, even though they're going against the Dolphins, and all that's tempting for people to stream against them, just don't do it. Just leave this offense alone unless you have James Robinson. Otherwise, we're going to completely ignore this pass offense and just pretend it doesn't exist. All right, guys. Those are some of the wide receivers I like and don't for week 6. Hope you win all your matchup this week. If you have any questions, again, feel free to hit me up on Twitter and check out RotoBaller all weekend long for the latest news and updates. All right, thanks for watching.